Matthew chapters 5 through 7 record what has come to be known as the Sermon on the Mount, likely the single most influential piece of moral teaching in human history. It was delivered early in Jesus' public ministry, on a hillside near the Sea of Galilee, to a crowd that included his close disciples along with curious onlookers from Galilee, Judea, Jerusalem, and even regions beyond the Jordan. By this point, word of Jesus' healing ministry had already spread throughout the region, and Matthew notes that great multitudes followed him specifically because they had heard what he had done, meaning many in the crowd that day arrived expecting a miracle worker and instead received something considerably more demanding, an entire framework for how to actually live. The sermon opens with the Beatitudes, a list of blessings that would have sounded almost paradoxical to its original audience, delivered in a calm, measured, poetic cadence rather than the fiery rhetoric a crowd might have expected from a new teacher seeking to establish his reputation quickly. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are they that mourn. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness. In a culture, much like our own, that generally equated blessing with wealth, power, and comfort, Jesus began by declaring the opposite, that those who feel spiritually empty, those who grieve, those who are gentle rather than dominant, are the ones truly blessed in God's kingdom. This wasn't a rejection of joy or success. It was a redefinition of where true flourishing actually comes from. Each beatitude follows the same structure, a condition paired with a promise, poverty of spirit paired with the kingdom of heaven, mourning paired with comfort, meekness paired with inheriting the earth, hungering for righteousness paired with being filled, mercy paired with receiving mercy, purity of heart paired with seeing God, peacemaking paired with being called children of God, and persecution paired again with the kingdom of heaven. The repetition of the kingdom of heaven at both the beginning and end of this list, a literary device called an inclusio, frames the entire section as fundamentally about what citizenship in God's kingdom actually looks like from the inside. This shift from avoidance to genuine delight is theologically significant, suggesting that authentic righteousness isn't merely defined by what one refrains from,
but more fundamentally by genuine, sustained engagement with and enjoyment of God's instruction.
Before even reaching the Beatitudes' full development, however, Matthew records Jesus using two images that frame everything that follows. Ye are the salt of the earth. Ye are the light of the world. Salt in the ancient world served as a preservative against decay and as a flavor enhancer, and Jesus' disciples, he suggests, are meant to function similarly within the broader world, slowing corruption and bringing out what is genuinely good in the surrounding culture, provided the salt retains its distinctive character. If the salt have lost his savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out, and to be trodden under foot of men. Light, similarly, is not meant to be hidden, neither do men light a candle, and put it under a bushel,
but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house.
And Jesus applies this directly to the visible conduct of his followers. Let your light so shine before men,
that they may see your good works, and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Notably,
this instruction to let good works be seen stands in apparent tension with the later warning against practicing righteousness to be seen of men, a tension resolved once the underlying motive is examined closely. Visible good works that point observers toward glorifying God differ fundamentally from religious performance designed to draw attention and praise toward oneself. From there, Jesus moved into teaching that repeatedly took the religious law his audience already knew and pushed it deeper into the condition of the heart rather than simply external behavior. Ye have heard that it was said, Thou shalt not kill. But I say unto you, that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. He did the same with adultery, extending the command to the posture of the heart, warning that looking on someone with lust had already accomplished the sin internally, and with oaths, encouraging simple honesty. Let your communication be, yea, yea, nay, nay, rather than elaborate vows meant to add weight to one's word. since the very need for an oath implied an ordinary word could not be trusted on its own. Perhaps most strikingly, Jesus addressed retaliation and enemy love directly. Ye have heard that it hath been said, An eye for an eye. But I say unto you, that ye resist not evil. Love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you. Each of these 6 examples, sometimes called the antitheses, follows an identical rhetorical pattern. Ye have heard, but I say unto you, and Jesus' use of this direct, personal authority, rather than citing established rabbinic precedent as other teachers of his day would have done,
would itself have struck his original audience as remarkable.
the sermon continues into practical matters of religious life, giving, prayer, and fasting,
Cautioning against performing these acts for public recognition rather than genuine devotion.
When thou doest thine alms, let not thy left hand know what thy right hand doeth. Jesus taught, contrasting quiet, private generosity with the ostentatious giving of those who sound a trumpet before them to be seen. It's within this section that Jesus teaches the Lord's Prayer, offering his disciples a simple, honest model for approaching God, acknowledging his holiness, hallowed be thy name, submitting to his will, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, asking for daily provision, give us this day our daily bread, seeking forgiveness while extending it to others, forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors, and asking for protection from temptation. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Jesus immediately underscores the forgiveness clause with a pointed follow-up. For if ye forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if ye forgive not men their trespasses,
Neither will your Father forgive your trespasses, making explicit that this single line of the prayer carries real,
ongoing weight in a disciple's life rather than functioning as mere ceremonial language. Jesus then turns to anxiety, pointing to birds and wildflowers as evidence of God's constant provision. Behold the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are ye not much better than they? He points similarly to the lilies of the field. They toil not, neither do they spin, and yet I say unto you, that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Using Israel's most legendarily wealthy king as the standard against which even a wildflower's simple, God-given beauty is favorably compared, a comparison that would have struck his agrarian audience, familiar with the fleeting, seasonal life of wild grasses and flowers scorched within days by the sun,
as a particularly vivid picture of how much more valuable and enduring human beings are within God's care.
Jesus concludes this section with the well-known instruction to seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness.
And all these things shall be added unto you, followed by the memorable, almost proverbial closing line.
Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof, a reminder that tomorrow's anxieties are not today's burden to carry. The sermon's final movement addresses discernment and warning, and deserves more attention than it often receives, since it's frequently treated as a brief conclusion rather than the sermon's own carefully built climax.
Jesus cautions against judging others hypocritically, using the vivid,
almost comic image of someone attempting to remove a speck of sawdust from another's eye while ignoring an entire log, lodged in their own. A deliberately exaggerated picture meant to expose how disproportionately we tend to scrutinize others' faults while minimizing our own. He teaches the golden rule: whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them, presenting it as a summary of the law and the prophets, a striking claim, given how much of the Hebrew scriptures this single sentence is meant to distill, an entire body of law and prophetic literature reduced to a single, reciprocal standard of treatment toward others. He warns of the narrow gate and the difficult way that leads to life, contrasted with the wide gate and broad way that leads to destruction, noting soberly that many there be which go in thereat, while few there be that find the narrow way. A warning against assuming that popularity or ease of a spiritual path is evidence of its legitimacy. He warns further of false prophets who will come in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves, identifiable He says, by their fruit, rather than their appearance, or even their claimed spiritual authority.
Since he warns that many will say to him in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name?
And in thy name have cast out devils? And in thy name done many wonderful works?
Only to be told, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity.
This is among the most sobering statements in the entire sermon. Religious activity, even activity that appears outwardly miraculous and impressive, is no substitute for being genuinely known by Christ, a distinction resting not on performance, but on relationship. The sermon closes with the famous parable, contrasting the wise man who built his house on rock with the foolish man who built on sand, both facing the same storm with vastly different outcomes.
The rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house.
And it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. Jesus says of the wise man's house, while the foolish man's house,
built on sand, faced the identical storm, and fell, and great was the fall of it.
The distinguishing factor wasn't whether the storm came. Both houses experienced the same weather, but what foundation had been laid before it arrived. To understand why this sermon carried such weight, it helps to remember the setting. Jewish religious teaching in this period often centered on detailed interpretation of the law of Moses, debated among various schools of thought, including the Pharisees and Sadducees, with rabbis typically grounding their authority in citations of earlier respected teachers. Rabbi so-and-so said. Jesus' teaching style, speaking with direct personal authority, I say unto you, rather than citing established rabbinic tradition, was itself remarkable to his original audience, who Matthew notes were astonished at his doctrine, for he taught them as one having authority, and not as the scribes. This detail, tucked into the final verses of Matthew 7, functions almost as the crowd's own verdict on everything they had just heard, a recognition,
even among those not yet fully convinced of who Jesus was, that something genuinely different had just been spoken.
Delivered not as commentary on someone else's authority, but as a direct claim to an authority entirely his own. The deeper meaning of the Sermon on the Mount lies in its consistent redirection from external performance to internal transformation. Jesus wasn't offering a new set of rules to follow more strictly than the old ones. He was describing what a life fully oriented toward God actually looks like from the inside out.
Anger untreated becomes murder in seed form. Lust untreated becomes adultery in seed form.
Anxiety reveals where our trust actually rests. Jesus consistently pointed to the heart as the real battlefield of faith, long before behavior ever becomes visible to others. This matters enormously for how we practice faith today. It's entirely possible to avoid every external sin the sermon addresses while still harboring the internal postures.
Jesus warns against bitterness, judgment, anxious distrust, performative religion done for the approval of others rather than genuine love for God.
The Sermon on the Mount challenges every generation of believers to examine not just what we do,
but what's actually happening in the quiet places of our hearts that no one else can see.
This teaching also carries significant implications for how we think about religious performance more broadly. 3 times in Matthew 6, regarding giving, prayer, and fasting, Jesus uses the phrase, "they have their reward,"
referring to those who practice these disciplines publicly for human approval.
The implication is sobering. The applause of onlookers is a complete transaction in itself, paid in full the moment it's received, with nothing further owed by God, since the reward being sought was never a heavenly one to begin with. This reframes an enormous amount of ordinary religious life, offered where others can hear, generosity displayed where others can see,
and asks a quietly uncomfortable question of every believer. Whom, exactly, are we trying to please?
It's worth pausing, too, on how carefully the sermon's structure mirrors its own content. Jesus doesn't simply list moral instructions in no particular order. He builds from inward disposition, the Beatitudes, to inward transformation of the law, the antitheses to inward.
Motive in religious practice, giving, prayer,
fasting, to inward trust regarding provision, anxiety, to inward discernment, judging false prophets before finally arriving at the outward test of all of it, whether a life is actually built in doing or merely admiring and hearing. The sermon's own architecture, in other words, embodies its central argument. Genuine righteousness moves from the inside out, never the other way around.
And any reading of the Sermon on the Mount that treats it as merely an external behavioral checklist has fundamentally
misunderstood its own carefully built shape. The sermon ends with a sobering but hopeful image. Two builders, facing identical storms, with entirely different outcomes based on the foundation beneath them. Jesus' point wasn't that faithful people avoid storms altogether. Both houses faced the same rain, wind, and flood. His point was that the quality of our foundation, built through actually living out what he taught, rather than simply admiring it from a distance. Whosoever heareth these sayings of mine, and doeth them, determines whether we stand or collapse when pressure inevitably comes. This distinction between hearing and doing runs through the entire sermon like a thread,
culminating in this final image precisely because it captures what's ultimately at stake in every preceding teaching.
Not admiration for a beautiful ethical vision, but the actual, costly practice of living it. 2,000 years later, that invitation remains exactly the same. To build a life, quietly and consistently, on the kind of foundation that holds,
not merely to nod in agreement with a sermon that continues to be admired more often than it is obeyed.